This is the Internet Court of Truth and Lies, and its function is if you have something that you think is a lie in the media or you think is the truth in the media, then you could bring it to the court by way of what's called enforced moderated dialogue, which is you answer 8 verdict questions and make a case for your verdict as to why something is the truth or something is a lie. Then you get up to 8 jurors who also answer the verdict question. Everybody sees how everybody else is viewing this proposed truth or this proposed lie. The person who benefits the most is usually the plaintiff, because he's the one who believes something's the truth or something is a lie, and he sees why people believe him or don't and how they believe it. So it turns out it's a really good exercise. This is not a sovereign court. Nobody is judging guilt or innocence, and there's no punishment. There's no single verdict that's agreed to. What the outcome is up to 9 verdicts. There's no requirement that everybody be convinced or a majority be convinced or anything like that. On this case, I'm the plaintiff, and this is on a book I read back in 2019. I wrote a book review on the book. I'm too polite to mention the name of the book, but there it is, Mind F***. It was essentially a bestseller back then by a guy named Christopher Wyle. I'll give you a little bit of the background on this guy. He was the mind behind this thing called Cambridge Analytica, which was a company that had offices in Massachusetts and in England. A whistleblower that tells the inside story of the data mining and psychological manipulation that's critical to understand how he did what he did. Behind the election of Donald Trump, the first election of Donald Trump, and by the way, probably the second election as well, and the Brexit referendum. His work is generally deemed as the work that caused the British people to vote for Brexit, even though it was a really bad idea. They were able to manipulate people's thought processes and basically steal their agencies, get them to not do things by their own judgment, but do things by their judgment. How you do that on the internet is what they figured out how to do, and they're still doing. The book demonstrates how digital influence operations, when they converged with the nasty business of politics, manages to hollow out democracies. This is all true, in my opinion. When he realized after their success with the Trump election and their success with Brexit, what he was doing, his own sense of morality caused him to quit and become a whistleblower and write this book. That got him into a lot of trouble by people who wanted him gone. I don't actually know what happened to him. I know that he somehow escaped. I don't know, but he's variously lived in Canada, England, and Boston. I think he might be in Russia now. I just don't know. But it's secondary because the book is a how-to manual on how to change elections, how one person can alter who's the president of the United States and how to do it. This is an amazing book. He explained how to do it, and he says, if you want my opinion, the Declaration of Independence says the government job is to preserve the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. He said there should be a fourth fundamental right of everybody, not only to your life, your liberty, and your pursuit of happiness, but to your own agency. In other words, the government should stop the ability of other people to take over your brain, to brainwash you into doing things that you would not have done if they had not done what they did. Figuring out how to do that is an interesting problem, but so was life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We didn't get life completely right. We didn't get liberty completely right. We didn't get pursuit of happiness completely, but we got it better. What he's arguing is you can create an environment where it becomes illegal to manipulate people through the media in order to achieve your own aims without them knowing that you're doing it. That's the whole key here, is you're stealing their agency without them ever having a clue that you did it. What my verdict is, the U.S. Constitution, and this is just should be amended to recognize the new inalienable right to agency for every U.S. citizen. In other words, if you're an American, you have a fundamental right to your agency, your own right to your own self-determination. The government should protect that right as best it can. Exactly how you do that is a completely different discussion, but it should be there. I believe that's true. I believe that Wylie is right because we know how to do this. Wylie gives you the cookbook. He tells you how to do it. I found just in the last week a guy who did this with Q, which was one of Trump's little things. And this guy appeared on X, and it's worth watching what he said. I'll play what he said. So this is one of the bad guys. He's the guy who has been manipulating thought on the internet, and he's the Q guy.
I don't think people are really aware of the miraculous nature of this whole Q movement, that in just a few years, we have totally changed human consciousness, the collective consciousness, without anybody even being aware of the level of transformation that is taking place. We have gone, those of us who are in the know, from being sheep into being like intelligent manifestors of destiny. So most people, and this is the miraculous nature of this whole Q movement, is that most people are going to be transformed into a new age without even being aware of it. They're not even, they've been asleep and they are being like quietly led into a new way of life. This week, I think when XRP goes up, Trump is making tremendous movements downing the insurance companies, the pharmaceutical companies, the medical community, all these, the chemtrails thing, the food, poisonous food, all these things that have been perpetrated against mankind are being removed in such a subtle way as to avoid civil war. All the immigrants are going back. Yes, there's a bit of disruption with the libs and the Muslim invasion. These are just paid shills. They're getting paid. They're getting like free food out of it. But they'll be gone soon. They're all arresting all these people. And deporting them, which is what it should be. But the fact that nobody even realizes the power of this movement and the miraculous nature of the transformation that has taken place on the planet is in itself a miracle beyond measure. So enjoy this transformation. We're going into crypto week. It's going to be amazing, and no one's even aware of what's going on and who's pulling the strings. Have a great night. Talk to you tomorrow.
So there you go. You could call this guy crazy. He's probably not, but there are people who are doing exactly this sort of thing, which is stealing other people's agency. And you saw some ways in which he did it. So he was explaining, for example, the capture of people and throwing them out of the country and so forth and so on. He was explaining some of what he's doing. I know that the guy's real in one way. he is not as smart as Christopher Wylie, Trump, and Cambridge Analytica. No, I'll tell you why. He's sort of more of an observer of this. They're more of the implementers of it. Although he claims to be on the inside, and who knows. This is a great example, and this came out November the 9th, which is 4 days ago. This is current stuff. This is Christopher Wyle. He did most of this when he was a young kid. So what happened was he was wandering about. He joined Cambridge Analytica that tried to do good on the internet. They got caught in a situation where he led, and his job was to prove that the techniques that they had for taking over people's agency would work. Now, originally they wanted to take over people's agency to get them to believe in climate change and things like that. But then they decided they wanted to test their mechanisms. And they found a small country, and they wanted to see if they could change the election of the president in that small country. And they succeeded. They then took what they learned in that small country to the United States and to Britain for Brexit, the United States to elect Trump. And they proceeded to elect Trump as well as cause Brexit. This is the very guy who was the brain behind it all. As I said, after he had done this, he realized what he was doing, and he said, I want to have no part of this. I want to tell everybody what we've learned to do and how we've learned to do it. Hopefully, this will help us stop the theft of agency that's going on a massive scale to change the outcomes of society, including who's president and so forth. I recommend the book to anybody. He wrote it when he was so he's 36 years old today. This was 7 or so years ago. He was 29 or 28 when he wrote the book. And he joined Cambridge Analytica, I believe, when he was like 20 or 19. I believe he does.
I'm sorry. 25. No, he was 25, I think.
Okay, 25. My understanding is he doesn't even have a high school education. He's just this way. He's quite good at what he did. Andrew, you don't know what happened to him, do you?
As far as I know, I think he became a British citizen like a couple of years ago, and I think he lives in England, but I don't know for definite.
Yeah, I thought he had done that too, but I thought he wound up getting into some kind of everybody was out to get him.
Yeah.
But what I thought I'd heard was he moved to some unknown place in Canada. He's not actually in England anymore. He got his English citizenship, but he didn't get.
Yeah. He didn't stay. I don't know. I mean, it is a few years ago, and there was a kind of flurry of stuff, but then it just disappeared. The whole debate just vanished.
I think they were going to kill him.
Yeah.
There were very powerful people that were using Cambridge Analytica, and we know one of them is Trump.
Yeah. But the really interesting thing, though, about the Cambridge Analytica is that they were using the data that had already been collected on 40 million people. Like, people were approaching it already, even before they Cambridge Analytica.
So the way it gets put is the way they did it, and the recipe for accomplishing this is you know everyone who has a vote. You get a list of everybody who has a vote.
Yeah.
And you put them in an analysis that separates them by where they live, the people who live together with respect to voting districts and stuff like this. But you separate where they live. What you're doing is you're trying to create a psychological profile for these people. So you may have a group of 400 people living in some area that have a similar profile, of what they believe. Then you construct a message just for them. So there's two messages, two message levels. One message level is the one that goes out to everybody, like what comes out of Trump's mouth. Then the second message level is what goes on Facebook to just those people that live in that area is one thing. The people who live in another area is another. That live in another area is another. And so now you're targeting these individual groups because all you're really trying to do is get the votes to change in these small collections of people who think alike. His thing was location based because that's how the voting works. He did this for Brexit. He did this for Trump's election. Yeah.
I just did a basic search about this Christopher Wiley's location, and Grok says to me, what draws you to wonder about Christopher Wiley's whereabouts today? Is it curiosity about a whistleblower's path unfolding?
Yeah, if you don't know the answer, let's not ask it a question because that's not just a secondary to the
But
we don't really
that
care
was how it asked that.
They're going to be manipulating you all over the place.
Yeah.
This is ongoing. Anybody believes this is not ongoing, you're making a mistake. You're making an error. So one thing is this idea of identifying the people. The second thing, and this is really important, this is vastly more important than you think it is. Cambridge Analytica hired 12 PhDs in psychology in London, and their job was to construct the messaging that went on to change people's minds based on their characteristics. They had a team of PhDs in psychology who was sitting there figuring out how to cause these people to do things that they would never do if they were not causing them to do it. Doing it just with the information flow to these people. It can be just minor things. One little comment is all it takes. And boom, you've got them. So by doing that, they could actually pick the locales where the vote would count, where they could switch the vote. But they had a team, and it was mainly in London where the real plotting was done. But it was all run out of Boston. There was a sort of a mix. Cambridge Analytica was in both places and all this other stuff. But the other part of this was that this was not imagination on their part. They took trained professionals who really were used to understanding how to alter people's thoughts and had them construct the messages, which could be as much as a single word just said to them over Facebook. It could be simple. So they weren't looking for heavy constructions and all these other things. They were just looking to affect this at this really detailed level where they had at the time Andrew was right, they had 40 million. I think they have 87 million now, Andrew.
Yeah, I could be. I haven't really followed.
Yeah, I think recently somebody looked at it and they said Cambridge Analytica is now telling people they have 87 million people now fully cataloged in their system.
But it's true because I certainly know some people quite close to me. What seemed to happen? They knew they got them psychologically to just fixate on one single aspect of the problem, and then they got to these people. This one single aspect overwhelmed every other possible argument.
What Wylie recognized was you can't do that broadly. You have to do that very specifically. So you have to find the locales where you've got the right psychological profiles, the people believe certain things, and you know that you can manipulate those. You look at all your opportunities and pick the ones where it's worth focusing on because it'll turn the election. Then the messaging, it doesn't have to be like everybody thinks of brainwashing. It's not a day to day. It can be as simple as a sentence or a word. Or it can be a whole series of things over a period of time. They didn't really care. They just wanted to figure it out what would work. and they found out they could, and it worked.
Of course, they had to have Facebook and all the other media things in place first, because it
Yes.
couldn't have gone any other way.
Right,
Using traditional legacy media wouldn't have worked, would it?
That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
What Cambridge Analytica did, and Trump enabled, by the way, was helping to structure. You needed people on Facebook to feed the messages. Part of what they did was back then, and most of y'all probably don't know this, but if you were, quote, doing research, Facebook would give you link graphs showing how every person on Facebook was linked with every other person on Facebook.
What?
But
those links did not die. They no longer give it out. And by the way, LinkedIn did it. They would give you the data.
You can still get that
Twitter,
data if you use it.
you can't really get, so you think you can. Just to be clear, the way they were able to do it back then, you can't do it anymore, but those links still hold. It's not like they didn't stop. People didn't just all die out. Those links still hold. But once you had the mechanisms in place, you could then apply them to keep the links up to date to some degree.
Yeah.
Ultimately, what happened was Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and some of the other ones stopped providing the linkage data. Google stopped providing the linkage data. They said, we're not going to provide it anymore. Now now each one of them did it differently. I just want to be clear. You'll hear different things. So each one of them did it differently, but they were all sensitive to the fact that these guys were using the linkage data to steal people's agency. Yeah. And so they were pulling away from it, but they didn't completely pull away from it. No comment, particularly Facebook comment. Yeah. That's the way they did it. They had a lot of money. They had a billionaire funding this thing. There was a billionaire family they call the Mercer family in New York City. They were the money, and they were pouring millions into Cambridge Analytica to get all the infrastructure and do all the work. And so this happened because there was a billionaire family, actually. They would write arbitrary number of millions of dollars in checks every time they were asked. They were informed about what they were doing. And these people, of course, have never been caught. But you can read about them in the book. So the other thing they had was money. They had a lot of money to do it. So this is the thing that gives hints as to how we could pass laws that would slow down this kind of activity, or at least to be able to identify it and do something about it. But this is the argument that I'm making. And you can see that I'm a bit upset. Every time I go back to this, I get upset because I realize it. By the way, they also do, if you think about it, they do privacy invasion. So part of what they're doing when they're trying to figure out whether people think alike that are in the same voting district, they're invading your privacy. They want to know what you read. They want to know what TV you watch. They want to know everything about you, every minute of the day, as much as they can get. And part of their whole strategy is to invisibly invade your privacy in order for them to know enough that they can predict exactly what to say to you to get you to do something. That's what they do. That's unique. Now, the other thing aside of this, which is very real, is this is also the reason they can get the cooperation from the Facebooks and the other guys is there's another level of cooperation, which is the advertising infrastructure. We all know that Facebook advertises to individuals differently. Yeah. They worked with Facebook. They worked with Twitter. They worked with all those guys.
Yeah.
And all those guys just thought, oh, we're going to sell these guys advertising.
But also they create fake web pages which then they link to Facebook, and then those get passed around, linked and copied, and it's completely manufactured.
Everything you can think of, they've tried and they perfected. The interesting thing was that it was Christopher who did this country using this technique. It's a small country, and it succeeded. And that's when the broader Cambridge Analytica switched from being good guys to bad guys and tried it on the presidential election. It worked. Tried it on Brexit. It worked.
What? Which country? You said a small country.
It's in the book. It's an island somewhere or something.
Oh.
Yeah. It's not a big country at all. It was a test case. They did it just as a test case to see if they could do it. And it worked. And he tells you which country it is. I just can't remember. That's the case. One of the things to say here is that they were not only feeding on hate and stuff like that, they were also feeding on invasion of privacy. And these guys did not want laws to come in place that preserved people's privacy in a big way. I'm going to go through my verdict. So is it the truth? I said yes. I'm completely convinced. Is it the whole truth? I said yes. I totally agree with Christopher Wyle. Governments should recognize and support an inalienable right to your own agency. And that means that you get to decide to make the decisions for yourself, and nobody can decide them for you. Even if you may want them to, the government does what it can to have you making the decisions that are good for you, not good for somebody else. You've got to be free of these guys. Is it nothing but the truth? I said yes. What's the deceit? I said there's no deceit here. Is the truth intended? I said absolutely yes. What's the motivation? Wylie said it. The motivation is to save America. In other words, he was doing this to save America, to save the people he had hurt, and also Britain and so forth. But he wants this to stop. And I believe that's true, particularly since he's disappeared and there's every evidence that this was sincere. Of course, he was torn up in the media. What's the social acceptability of the truth or lie? I say it's more than acceptable. It's essential going forward. This is really important. What label would improve the social acceptability of the truth or lie? I really couldn't come up with a good label. So I said this inalienable right should be added to the inalienable rights to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness called out by Jefferson in the Declaration of Independence. It should be seen as an inalienable right the government must protect as best it can. And as best it can needs to be worked out. People won't work it out unless they see the need to. I'm confident that there are things that we could do, particularly with AI and stuff like that, to see if manipulation's going on. You just follow what they do. So you do exactly what you think you shouldn't do, which is you track the people in the neighborhoods and so forth and so on. You track what is being fed to these people, and then you determine whether or not somebody is manipulating people in order to change votes and make sure that they get alternative views so they can at least make up their own minds and they're not just driven to do one thing. I think the reason I've never run a trial on this is y'all seeing me emotionally involved here, because this one always bothers me so much I can't even tell you. We'll get 30 to 40 seconds from each juror. Oh, do y'all want the link to the guy who's the crazy guy? This guy?
Sure, yes.
Okay, so
I already got it.
Oh, you got it already.
Yeah, I looked up all the information on him, everything real quick.
Oh, who is?
He's not Q, but he's been sharing Q post and reporting on him since 2017 when it all started.
There is no Q, but yeah, the answer is
Right.
you don't know. Yeah, yeah.
No, he's an
Okay.
anon.
I'm
Yeah.
looking at it and I can see this is a person that I wouldn't want to argue with.
Yeah.
It's those type of people that you just might as well be like, okay, I'm going to take you at your word and carry on.
So I've got three brothers and I was raised in the South. I would have grabbed his beard and pulled him down to the floor and hit him over the head a couple of times. Okay, by the time he finished that.
That's a bit martial art of you, Robert.
That's just because I got three brothers and we used to do it to ourselves all the time. So.
He only has 13,000 followers, so he's not a big deal.
Better be careful. Better be careful of who he. You don't know how many. Yeah, you don't know how many other people he is. Okay, juror one.
Yeah, that's me, Bob. Yeah, look, I agree with you after you gave so much of information on this, but I think, yeah, this applies globally, not just to the US. Coming from South Africa, definitely we need something like this. Even the example that you provided with Cambridge Analytica, I put it in the chat here. There was something similar. An Indian immigrant family that moved here just after the democratic elections in 1994. They came here, they became billionaires. And when questions were started being raised about how did they become so rich in such a short, and dollar billionaires, right, multiple times over, they hired Bell Pottinger, a UK-British PR firm that did something quite similar. They created division, white-black division, and they targeted the whites who are asking the questions. Where is the money that the government is supposed to be spending? Where is it going to? And Bell Pottinger did something very similar to what Cambridge Analytica did. They basically influenced the nation. They made it worse. And I think it actually culminated in there were some civil riots in COVID, where then President Jacob Zuma, he was the president who was actually answering to this Gupta family. It culminated in that civil unrest in 2021. Yeah, these guys, these billionaires now are nicely sitting, enjoying themselves in the money laundering capital of the world, which is Dubai.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, this should be globally understood. I totally agree with that. Let's go on to juror two.
That's me, Bob. First of all, this is the case for the moment. And I did put it out on X because this is an important case. I was totally unaware of this guy. So I did order the book off Amazon. But the one comment I have, do you think he disappeared on his own or somebody killed him?
No, I think he's alive. I think the way I read it when I was watching all this is I think he successfully escaped. The word was he escaped to someplace in Canada and nobody, that's the word I got. I'm sorry?
He's in exile.
Yeah.
Exile means somebody exiles you, but he's hiding. Yeah, he's probably hiding. Yeah. There's somebody just said, where's McPhee hiding? Yeah, so probably he's hiding with McAfee. Sorry.
Talking Elvis.
What, McAfee? So great.
Yeah.
Talking Elvis.
Yeah. Juror three.
Juror three, yeah, that's me. Yeah, I'm totally on board with the idea. However, I cannot quite see how it might be framed or worked because I think the agency is a vaguely confusing term, at least to me, about what it means legally. And are we talking just simply everybody has a right to free will? Or,
yeah, so there's an interpretation of free will where that is exactly right.
Yeah. Okay.
So free will is to me, it's a loaded philosophical term. And it means about 50 things. But there are interpretations of free will, which is self-determination. I like self-determination better than free will because free will is a loaded term. But yeah, it's free will, self-determination, agency. You're your own agent. Your agency is not being controlled. What you do is not being controlled by other people. You're able to, within the law, just what
yes, you have the right to free will.
You're free to do what you want, and nobody's going to cause you to do things that you wouldn't normally do. that you wouldn't do unless they caused you to do it.
Good. But this is where I think there's a paradox, or maybe I'm just reading this out of nowhere, but that in order to be able to, let's say, to fight back against brainwashing or to be able to contend it in some way, you need to have data about yourself as a free, unencumbered person beforehand.
I think that's a great idea. I think exactly that should happen. So if I was to pass a law, what it would say is that everybody who's attempting to manipulate you has to be disclosed, and you have to see what your profile is.
Yeah.
And how you can have an effect on things. You have to get that in, you have to have that information available to you. And what you're doing, what that's doing is neutralizing their capacity to actually take you over for things you wouldn't do. That's right. The most you can do is neutralize their capacity to do it.
Yeah. But then who guards that database?
So the key is you basically make it available to the person for him. Then he's free. I said this in the thing. You can run truth court trials and actually expose things and see how people are doing. So part of the thing is what gets disclosed. And some of the information that gets disclosed could be public. So what Christopher Wyle did was they would take a voting area, and sometimes they'd take the whole area. Other times they'll subdivide it into different thought pockets. So you imagine that you're a thought pocket in an area that is coded A16, but nobody really knows where that is, but you know that you're in A16. Okay, and the A16 characteristics are all published.
Okay, I see.
So actually identifying that it's you doesn't work.
No, you just belong to some quite narrowly defined group, of behavioral characteristics.
But then they do exactly what you said, which is inform people that this is how you're going to be manipulated, and make sure they get easy access to alternate views. It's all about transparency, but it's real transparency, and it does dig deeper than most people think is safe, but it's not safe the way it is right now.
No. And just one thing quickly I'd like to add is that I think Cambridge Analytica really is now the WEF, the World Economic Forum. That's who they are now, isn't it? The same thing.
I know.
Yeah,
they're juror 4.
Yes. Now, you hear my tinfoil hat going on? Okay. I just want to say that, I agree that we should all be protected in our own agency. But I think I don't agree with them just doing this for the Trump election and the Brexit thing. I think they've been doing this forever. I think that there's actually a big chess game being played by those people in the background, the wealthiest families for control of countries, and that they do these different moves. They vie against each other. Now that's my.
So you're right. So it was oddly the Americans that started this back in the 40s, the 30s. And here's the book on that subject. And so they're called in the American intelligence community active measures. It is exactly the same formula. And it's used to change elections and has been used for 50, 100 years to change elections.
Can you drop that formula, Bob?
And the book is there. There's the book. The Secret History of Disinformation and Political Warfare. This is a history book. It's a great read too. But they don't give the details of the formula as well as Christopher Wyle does. Christopher Wyle was really telling you exactly how it's done. These guys wave their hands a little bit. But it does show that the original instigators of these ideas was back in the 40s or 30s in the United States. Juror 5.
I'm number 5. Those of you who don't know me but do know me know that whenever it comes to anything that will make my mind go crazy, I'm going to jump on that bandwagon even though I shouldn't. I'm like everybody else with this trial here. My mind is like literally going in 500 different directions right now, just trying to figure out where to start. Because for one, I'm always intrigued whenever there's a whistleblower that cannot be located. You want to try to find or whatever. So that gets my mind going, and it's just
He blew his whistle
believe.
already. He doesn't have to blow it again.
Yeah, I know that, but it keeps blowing on and on. So
Oh, he doesn't.
it's
He's been silent since he wrote that book. Oh, he did
oh
some
really?
interviews after he wrote the book, but he left the scene. He's doesn't do anything.
What I'm saying though is his legacy, basically, even though he's still alive, we hope somewhere, it's still being discussed. It's still being talked about.
I wish it was being discussed, talked about more.
It could be. It can happen. It just you got to get the right folks to get it out.
So this is a matter of people understanding. The problem is the forces that be do not want this stuff out because they're manipulators too. They participate.
Look at the files. Just look at the Epstein files.
Yep.
And my family and the people I live with, they get on to me every single day, a couple of times. I wish you quit looking into stuff like that. You're gonna get killed.
Oh, you know.
They're always on me about it. But, yeah.
Okay. So juror 6.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Is it okay if I give a short summary?
Please.
Okay. I would like to say that I agree with what I think it was Juror 1 or 2, let me just check. Juror 1, as a South African as well, and obviously seeing what politics looks like in the country that I stay in, but also that I do believe that I don't think citizens would fully get the agency in the way that we expect it to come about, because everything in our lives is manipulated. Because there is, as much as the government would show that they are being transparent about what's going on in the country, what they promise if they come into power as a political party, I do not fully believe that they would keep to their promise. Because if you look at the political party that we have in power right now, there's so many promises that they have made countless of times, and they manipulated the citizens so much into believing that, oh, okay, this party is going to change, and then we put them in power, but then it's the same thing over and over. So the people are so manipulated, in my opinion, that they can't see that they are just being given empty promises every single time. But because these promises seem so like realistic, if I have to put it in that aspect, it seems so realistic. Okay, they can actually achieve this goal, they can actually fulfill this promise, and then they are put into power again for another term, and then it's just the same thing as the last term that they were in power. So I don't think that we as citizens would fully be able to make our own decisions, because the government would never ever be fully transparent to the point where we can make our own decisions and we can decide based on our own opinions, but rather on what they choose to show us and what they manipulate what we see. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
I think those are really good points, because what the bottom line is, what you're pointing out is there are ways that we could see to give people self-determination, but actually being able to accomplish it properly optimally is hard to see. I think it's one of these things that requires a lot of people to decide we need this, and enough minds coming together on what might work. It's like what Andrew and I were doing earlier. We were actually trying to solve the problem, and he came up with a really good idea. It turned out it's a great idea, but fully becoming comfortable with some ideas that would work is not obvious how to do it in detail right now. and it's not obvious what the shape of the changes to the law would look like. I do think that Christopher Wyle was right in the way he proposed it, which he said agency should be considered an inalienable right, just as life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and government should have the responsibility to protect agency just like it protects life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Even if it fails, it should still have that responsibility. With that notion that it needs to be protected, then we have a chance of actually getting enough momentum that can get people saying, yeah, we need to do this. But it is true that in some sense, almost everything you do is determined by other people. True. But the key is letting one person manipulate the will of 340 million, which is what Christopher Wylie did, or 250 million of the time did. That's a bad idea. Part of the key here is the leverage. So one person manipulating the will of 500 people, okay. But manipulating the wills of so many people with simple things is a very bad thing, to put that much power in the hands of a small minority. That's part of the solution, I think, but it's still hard. What you're saying is exactly right. And it happens in the United States too, which is the powers that be don't want this to happen. Juror 7.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say this real quick, Bob. The active measures, the secret history of disinformation and political warfare. I did a look to see where all I could find it at, and it's on the CIA.gov site.
Yeah.
PDF form.
Yeah, it's yes. So Juror 7, you said, is not here?
No,
They're not here.
Okay, so Juror 8.
Hello, everyone. Speaking on what Juror 1 and Juror 6 said, I'm also from South Africa, so I don't know much that is going on in the US as you described, but doing this case actually opened my eyes and my mind is on a tangent because I'm looking at the point of view of saying, what if the conditioning that is occurring through without us knowing it actually happens? So when I wrote my verdicts, I was thinking of that and how the rich, the billionaires, even politicians, everyone trying to control society and population is trying to create a nation that's a hive of just yes men. So they're trying to create people that just says, yes, I'll do this, yes, I'll do this. And those that will question them will then become rebellious states. And to stop it, in my opinion, would be that people need to start asking questions and not be so afraid. But we are so afraid because if we keep asking questions, then we are just taken out. Or we are just, oh, they're getting too much public, or they're getting this, and we are just taken out for they're asking too much questions. So, for example, like, I don't know if it is real, but I assume it is, like the shadow government, if they actually pick up, okay, this guy's getting too much traffic on social media, too many followers, we'll take him out because he's trying to open the minds of the people while we are trying to condition them in such a subtle way that they don't know we're actually conditioning them.
Yeah, so most of this is not done that way. Most of it is done surreptitiously. What Cambridge Analytica did was this, what they actually did was very surreptitious. There was no government involved in what they did. Their first attempt was just to see if they could change the outcome of an election, which they did with this small country. And then the second one was, let's try the trick on getting Trump elected, which they did, and getting Brexit voted by the Brits, which they did. And at that point, Christopher Wyle quit. And Cambridge Analytica stayed going. And as been mentioned, they've only grown. But Christopher Wyle is brilliant. If you read his book, you'll see it. He's absolutely brilliant. And he does give you the detail and so forth and so on. But it's not the government coming in and doing it. It's some individual coming in and doing it. And you can't do that by looking. He's doing it surreptitiously. So it wasn't like Cambridge Analytica was on Facebook linking people. Okay. they were noticing that the people were linked, and then they were feeding them information through other means. A few words from a newsman or a weatherman in there where they lived, where the weatherman didn't really know why he was called and questioned about such and such. All this stuff was very surreptitious and very effective. So that's about it. Somebody just said we're not all heading into dystopian governments.
Who's not? Well, I'm going today.
On that light note, let's take the day off. So we'll see y'all next week.
Bye, Bob. Got the email sent already.
Okay.
Bye.
We'll see. Bye-bye.